Do you know what the single greatest predictor of academic success that exists is? Do you know what it is?
No.
It is something that's called executive function, which I'll unpack.
Okay.
Executive function is a greater predictor of academic success than IQ, which is the next greatest predictor, but it pales into insignificance for executive function. Executive function has two gadgets, and you can see it in adults. Because I'm from Seattle, I work with Boeing, occasionally do a fair amount of consulting. And I will tell Boeing, okay, I'll give you an example of what executive function is. Executive function is the same talent that allows you to build those wonderful aircraft and make those satellites that they do. It's good for gist versus detail and planning for the future. You actually are pretty good at math if you've got executive function.
Right.
It can be. But it is the exact same cognitive gadget, Matt, that keeps you from punching your boss in the nose if you get a bad performance review. Because it's all about impulse control. So the ability to control your impulses and the ability to see gist versus hierarchy is all about executive function. That's what it is. And it's a greater predictor of academic success than IQ. The single greatest predictor of a child's executive function score is the emotional stability of the home. So the whole thing as a syllogism works like this. The single greatest predictor of academic success that exists is the emotional stability of the home. And it comes because of its direct effects on something you can measure in our laboratories, executive function. No kidding. So the next question then is, well, how do you improve executive function?
Well, how do I improve stability in the home, I guess is what I'm asking, right?
Sure. Well, let's take both of those. Let's take the last one first. All right. It begins the moment you find out you're pregnant. You know, statistically, by the time you have a little one, your first one, you're a rookie parent, and the first one is, say, 6 months of age, the amount of marital conflict has skyrocketed in most American households.
Sure.
The amount of marital satisfaction by the time a kid is a year old has plummeted in some studies by 90%.
Wow.
And in the transition to parenthood, it's tough. And most parents don't know that. They don't know that even if it's a stable marriage, they don't know that there's a tsunami coming. But it's huge. And here's the kicker, Matt. Marital conflict can directly affect the developing nervous system of the children being raised in that home.
Really?
So it's not trivial to say fighting, it's going to fight, get over it. In fact, what's interesting so we should unpack all this. What's interesting, oddly enough, it's not the amount of conflict that the kid sees that is the kicker. It's the amount of unresolved conflict that the kid sees. Let's say the kid is now 24 months of age, so they can take the temperature of the household pretty well. Sophisticated brain at 24 months, I'd argue, emotionally. What they see, most parents will fight in front of their kids. Sometimes arguments are like snowballs. It just rolls down a hill. You can't help it. And I totally get that. But they will almost always resolve it in private. So you might be fighting for a while in front, but at midnight you go, honey, I'm sorry, I screwed that up. And then you resolve.
Right.
All is well. Well, what does the kid see? The kid never sees the resolution. The kid only sees the fighting. That asymmetry is the killer. That's the thing that changes developing nervous systems. It doesn't change the developing nervous system if you make them so that they are equal. Lots of fighting, lots of resolution. Kid is fine. In fact, I'd argue that if you're not if you're not being fake in front of your kids, where you're fighting and you're resolving the same way, that they actually learn from you about the fact that, hey, conflict is a normal part of life and resolution is a normal part of life. Here it is. At any rate, the kid's nervous system develops fine. So I encourage couples, especially when they first find out they're pregnant, no kidding, to go out and buy a baby doll. Buy one and fight in front of it. Okay? And then resolve in front of it. Get practice at this. Because if you can do that, you begin to stabilize. The emotional stability of the home is assured. And when that happens, executive function is something that can flower in your kids, and all of a sudden you're into happy GPA land. Or at least the kid can mobilize whatever IQ they have better than kids who don't have that experience.
It's a lot to take in. I mean, it's all good stuff. And I think it leads to parenting. We're always looking for ways to do it better and to have a happier home, to have a healthier home, and to raise kids in a better way. Some of the stuff I think is scary because it's not just, well, if he studies harder and you read to him younger, or you do these things, it's all going to be better. Yeah. This is so much about us, more than we probably ever would have guessed.
And it's brain science. It's the dangest thing. You can actually watch nervous systems develop or not. I'm a molecular biologist, and my specialty is the genetics of psychiatric disorders. I'm not a parenting expert. I would argue there's no such thing, that parenting is an amateur sport. But there are some ways the brain works and the way the brain does not work that I think parents should know about. A real good example that you can show, let's talk about our rookie parent who's now just bought the doll and they're starting to argue.
Sure.
Fine. Here's another thing they can do. In the transition to parenthood, if you've got a 90% collapse in marital satisfaction, which is a stunner to say, but it's common, as you well know.
Sure.
The question was, and researchers went after, well, then what is it that couples fight about? What are in the transition to parenthood? There's 4. One of them is sleep loss. Oddly enough, that's a really big one. It's not the biggest. Another one is social isolation. Your friends begin to melt away, and you don't get new ones.
Right.
Third is affective disorders. Depression is a big deal. And interestingly enough, it's postpartum depression often laid on the woman. But what a lot of people don't know, and research is very clear about, that if the mother gets depressed, the father has a 50% chance of going into the depression also. So you can get these death spirals in these households. And the 4th one is the one I land on because it's the biggest. Oddly enough, it's chore inequity. In 2008, even if both couples are working, if you look at all the household chores that are done, folks, and it doesn't matter whether you're doing the groceries or doing minor household repairs, women do 70% of it and men do 30%. And believe it or not, that's often applauded because in 1978, the figure was 15 to 85.
I'm sure.
Nobody's going to call that equal, Matt. And if a guy stays home, it produces an extra 7 hours of work per week for the woman.
Really?
So, chore inequity. If you really want to stabilize your kids' developing nervous system so that there's stability in the home and executive function comes out, what I suggest couples do after they've just bought their baby and they find out they're pregnant is that they create 2 lists. List A, all the things mom does in the house. List B, all the things dad does in the house. And if there is a disparity, if there's asymmetry between those 2, you fix it. And you make it so that it's equal, so that by the time the baby does come, you already know in advance. It's a little bit like putting a chore list on the wall, isn't it? It's the same idea. The aware now, but so that you can dampen at least that down, so that the guys know their responsibilities and the woman knows her responsibilities. It's funny to say, if you really want to get your kid into Harvard, guys, learn how to clean the toilet.
Well, the interesting thing is can that be a learned behavior after the marriage has already started? Because I think sometimes people go into it. I think a big problem with marriages is people don't realize the compromise level. That you went in thinking, well, this is how it was when I grew up, and I'm not going to have to do all this stuff, and I'm out working, she's not working, whatever. And people need to meet in the middle. Isn't that where a lot of it goes wrong? Can we really, once we're in a marriage, these guys that even in 2008 were doing it this way, can they say, oh, all right, yeah, you're right, this is how it should be. Let's work out the list. Let's do it. Is that going to work?
Well, it's just a choice. They could do it anytime they wanted. I call it male withdrawal reflex. That's not in the research literature. It's just Medina's work on it. But I've seen it over and over again in marriages. What happens is that guys begin to map onto how they were raised. And just even out of this one generation, most of us come out of pretty traditional households where the woman did X, Y, and Z and the man did X, Y, and Z. Right. What a lot of guys don't realize, they'll come home from work and they're exhausted. And maybe the mom's been a stay-at-home mom, but she's been working just as hard as he. And guess what? She doesn't get to go home from that and take a break. It's still there for her. Yeah. So he really needs to understand that there's going to be a double shift in his job if you sign on to being a dad. And that you're going to do your normal work if you're going to live in a traditional household. There's no reason why you should, but if you do, when you come home, things have just started. It's not time to do World of Warcraft or watch Monday Night Football before it's time for the 2 of you to go back to your list and see what needs to be done. And for the guy, perhaps, to get in the idea that there's going to be a second shift and that you're signing up for that if you decide to have children.
It's all true. I mean, it's very true, and I know that very well. I think a lot of times when I see marriages go wrong, and I've seen plenty with our friends and family, it's because we're not, making those adjustments.
Yeah, they don't make them.
The book is called Brain Rules for Baby, How to Raise a Smart and Happy Child from 0 to 5. After that, John Medina doesn't care what happens to you. You're on your own. Dr. Medina, thank you so much for being here for us.
What a delight, Matt.